So we were sitting there, she was telling me her testimony. She had been kicked out the hospital because her uterine cancer had metastasized to her bladder. They told her at the hospital was nothing else she could do. When nobody was at the hospital, she left the hospital, checked herself out, and left, walked away. She was just wanderously walking the street. She is out of the hospital just for a few hours when she happened upon me. She was sitting there, and I was sitting there, and I was listening to this, and all of that Jesus compassion was just eluding from me. It was just a lot. And she began to cry, and then she was eating her garlic bread. And the tears, and you know when you're crying and the saliva stretching and everything is wet and moist, and God says, take that piece of bread from her. And I just didn't think twice. And all I told God at that moment was, I'll do it if the saliva is warm and I don't feel it. And I didn't want it to be cold, like, you know, like I felt it. So God told me to take that piece from her. And when she pulled that piece, and I took it and I ate the other half of that bread and her saliva, everything. I know y'all just whatever. But at that moment, I took my left hand and one of my hands, I laid it on her belly. And I didn't know what was happening. She was describing it. She was saying, oh, I have this warm feeling. And it just was growing. It was like it started a small ball in her stomach. And it was just growing outwardly, like starting like a little ball. And it was just growing outwardly out of her belly. And she began to cry and weep. And the people at the restaurant was just looking at us. And I laid my hands there. And then I started to feel the warm exchange. And I was like, my goodness, but I didn't break concentration. Like, it was the first time I had ever done anything like this in my life. It was the first time ever. And I just did it. I just laid my hands on it. I didn't know what was going to happen. And she just, told me. And so my hands was laid there, the warm heat and everything. She ate her food. And after that, we left. But at that moment, when I took that bread from her, she began to weep and cry. She says, nobody has ever treated me like this. Nobody's ever done this for me. She's like, you're eating behind me? And I was just like, yeah, because, you don't break mood. And so we finished everything. We walked our separate ways.